Working? I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is a show focusing on workplace and workforce trends, finding people that are doing interesting things in the workplace and with their workforce, as well as finding people that do interesting things in their work life, their business. It's always been an itch of mine that I long to scratch, is to ask people, tell me more about what it is that you do. Or you hear about them and you read about them and you say, gosh, I'd like to sit down with those people. Well, I learned the hard way that just calling someone and saying, hey, can I ask you questions for about an hour? I'm just curious, is a quick way to have the phone hung up on you. However, when you start a radio show and call people and say, I'd like you to be on my radio show so I can ask you questions for an hour, they cancel family vacations in order to get on this thing, and it is sufficed to scratch the itch that I've always had. Let's get into the content of today's show. As I record right now, you can hear the rain outside. It seems like this winter it has been more raining than not raining. And I saw on my weather app this morning that the Alabama River is up again, even higher. They're predicting flooding around the Berry steam plant, and there's more water coming. It hasn't crested yet. And as I looked at the weather this morning, I see the northern part of the state is getting a ton more water. It's not raining hard here right now in Mobile, but the northern part of the state's getting pounded again, meaning more water will be in our area very soon, which means what? There will be homes, there will be businesses, there will be farms that were begun along the banks of the Alabama River around the Berry steam plant and further north that they thought, well, we're safe here. However, another flood is on its way. The businesses will be inundated with water. They'll have to clean it up, clean it out. They'll decide whether they should rebuild. This happens over and over again. One of the things that happens in the wake of these types of floodings is the disaster recovery industry comes on site and evaluates what's going on, evaluates the amount of damage, creates a plan of action. This is not what I'm really clear on, which is why I've invited our guest today. A plan of action, writes them a check or approves an amount and gets them back on their feet. It's what our insurance, frankly, our property and casualty insurance, pays for in the event of disaster. Our guest today is the owner of one of the local organizations, and we have quite a few in and around Mobile, more than I had thought, that sends people out and that he himself goes out and evaluates these things. His business is more commercial than residential, but I'm curious how the business works, how they learn the value of things, how they get on site, how much is able to be done remotely through satellites, through drones, through, Google Earth. I look on Google Earth from time to time and am amazed by how recent the photos that have been taken of my own house or places around my town or places around the state that I visited frequently and how up to date these images are. So I'm wondering, does Google Earth take a lot of the travel off their plate? For those of you that are from around here, I suspect many of you are, I'm going to list a couple of names, not a couple, about 10. And you tell me, think of this as what they have in common. Here we go. Aaron, Opal, I think that's it. That'll do it for most of you. Aaron, Opal, Danny, George, Dennis, Ivan, Katrina, Gustav, Ike, Isaac, Harvey, Irma, Maria, Florence, and Michael. These are the hurricanes that have hit the Gulf Coast most recently and all around the Deep South. And these are the events that Global Disaster Solutions is hired to go evaluate, the destruction that this company is hired to go evaluate. When we come back from break, I'm going to have Russell Fountain on the line. He's the owner of Global Disaster Solutions. He's going to talk to us about the work that they do, what they see when they're out there, what they look for in people that can evaluate these things, how technology is changing his business, whether he, like so many businesses that we talk to these days, is struggling for people and how he keeps the people that he has. I'm interested particularly in his thoughts on global warming. Yes, you can't say global warming in this part of the country without somebody assuming immediately, because I said the word, that I'm a card-carrying liberal. Nope, I'm going to mention it. Global warming. What is global warming doing to his business? Does he expect it to get to more robust? Is he trying to find people to combat the hiring shortages that perhaps bigger and more frequent storms do to global warming? Before we go to break, find us on Instagram, folks. Search for What's Working with Cam Marston. Facebook, What's Working with Cam Marston. Here's the phone/text line, 251-260-8100. Again, 251-260-8100. It's unmanned. Text us or call us and leave us a voicemail. We'll get back to you. And you can find this as a podcast on cammarston.com at the top of the page. When we come back from break, we'll have Russell Fountain, owner, Global Disaster Solutions. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
Hey, this is Cam Marston. If sales in your business comes from prospecting to create leads that lead to sales, I want to tell you about Sales Up Coach, a cloud-based system created for the next generation of sales professional. There's a big difference between being busy and being effective. And Sales Up Coach helps salespeople who rely on prospecting uncover which of their activities produce the greatest results. Over time, Sales Up Coach's machine learning hones salespeople's schedule to focus only on activities that generate the most bang for the buck. Your sales team interacts with Sales Up Coach on their smartphone, and sales managers can instantly generate reports to see who is on goal and who may need additional support. Go online and take a look at this new and very powerful sales tool. Go to salesupcoach.com/Cam Marston. Watch your sales team's productivity change.
Is your business growing? Does your existing metal building need an update? Expansion? New roof? With almost 20 years of experience, Mosley Building Systems is the leading metal building contractor along the Gulf Coast. We are your local design build experts. From expansion to new construction or repairs, we can guide you through all aspects of your project. Mosley Building Systems works with each client to fulfill their vision. For more information, go to mosleybuildingsystems.com.
On the line with me is Russell Fountain. Russell is the owner of Global Disaster Solutions based here in Mobile. They go on site to where disasters occur, evaluate the significance of it, and work with the insurance company and the business or homeowner to get the healing, the remedy started. Russell, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Thank you so much, Cam. Happy to be here.
Give me an overview. Let's start with a general overview of what it is that you do. I just tried to explain it. I'm pretty sure I did a poor job. Tell the listeners what it is that Global Disaster Solutions does.
We provide consulting and disaster recovery options for our customers. You know, our customers can be a diverse group of people or businesses, insurance companies, adjusters, business owners, things of that nature. But we come in and provide consulting services consisting of helping them, working with whomever has retained us to help them get through the process of whatever disaster they're facing. We also still do some actual disaster recovery work, primarily on large losses, where we come in and help with the cleanup, sometimes the reconstruction. Just depends on the nature of the disaster that we're faced with.
So my son or daughter spills a glass of milk in the kitchen, and we look at it, or they look at it and say, this is a disaster. I have a feeling that there's a agreed upon term in your industry of what defines a disaster. What is the definition of a disaster in your profession?
Well, in my profession, it can almost be anything. Obviously, we're not responding to spilled milk, but it could be an industrial plant that processes milk that could have a problem, and we would certainly respond to that. But more times than not, it's a sudden and accidental, unfortunate event that affects a person's home, affects their business, affects their livelihood. These can be fires, they can be hurricanes in our neck of the woods. Out west, there are earthquakes and fires and all sorts of things. So it's really anything sudden and unexpected that can affect your livelihood.
And are you called in across the nation to evaluate these things? For example, you mentioned earthquake out west. Is this something you deal with, or are you regionally, do you have a regional expertise?
I have been all over the United States for various events. I have not responded to an actual earthquake or wildfire event, but it is interesting. I just had a customer of mine talking about their next biggest fear in terms of the exposure of what they insure, and it's a big insurance company, is earthquakes out in California. And I said, oh, really? Because they really, while there have been, small earthquakes here and there through the years, but over the last 20, 30 years, there's not been, quote, the big one. But there's a lot of concern out there in the industry about the big one because historically, it's probably time for something like that to occur. So earthquakes are different in nature than hurricanes, obviously. So it's just interesting that someone just brought that to my attention, that that's kind of their biggest concern currently is the next big earthquake.
So let's take a regional expertise of yours and something that most of us can relate to, and that would be a hurricane coming ashore. And let's say the hurricane comes ashore, and let's just for the purposes of argument, it's a Category 5, and it's a monster, and it comes right up the mouth of Mobile Bay, and it wipes out Mobile Bay, Eastern Shore, etc. Tell me what happens from your business at that point. The hurricane has cleared, it's moved up into the Carolinas. When does your phone start to ring? Who has dialed it? Has it started to ring prior to the hurricane making landfall? Take me through the steps that happen as that hurricane approaches.
Well, it has absolutely rung off the hook prior to the hurricane ever impacting or making a landfall. I used to say back in the day that when it rounded the turn there at the Keys and starts heading into the Gulf, that's when everyone who has a Gulf Coast exposure from Texas through Florida is becoming keenly aware that they could be impacted. As we all know, there's a cone of forecast that the Weather Channel provides. We all wake up the next morning and it always seems to shift. Yeah. So everyone is aware. Everyone's starting to get prepared, or they should start to be starting to get prepared. And we just watch it and track it. And as the cone narrows and goes to a certain geographic area, depending on the customer base, the clientele, we're already preparing for that. Sometimes we have fully prepared in terms of resources and manpower and other things. And, luckily for everyone, the hurricane actually fizzles out and comes ashore as a weaker Category 1 or 2 storm that, for the most part, doesn't cause too much catastrophic damage.
So what does it mean to prepare? What are you doing to prepare? You say people are calling, the phone's ringing. Who's calling? What is preparing looking like?
In terms of the commercial sector, a business, and a business can consist of a school system, a hospital, your typical mom and pop store, property management companies that have properties all over a geographic area that could be impacted. Preparing means, having resources ready on standby. That could be physical resources in terms of supplies, things you can purchase at, a Lowe's or Home Depot, that sort of thing, generators. But it's also having, companies that respond to these type of events that are already, prepared, maybe have met with them in the past to, prepare a checklist to understand their needs should an event happen. Healthcare, for instance, hospitals, they don't just shut down because a hurricane is coming. Now, if it's big enough, they will evacuate patients and move them to other facilities. Nursing homes, same thing. They have a different level of prioritization than others, but there's just so many things out there that people can do and be prepared for in case it happens. I was reading a journal recently, one of those articles, and I get this kind of stuff in this industry. And it spoke of, I believe it said 40% of businesses that are affected by a major disaster never reopen.
40%?
40%.
Wow.
I thought the same thing. I was like, wow. And I'm in the industry.
Yeah.
It further said within the following 2 years, an additional 29% are no longer in business. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I see it and understand it because I've been to so many disaster zones, but I'm like, wow, that is almost 70% of businesses. They're saying that if they're significantly impacted by some sort of a disaster, whether it's a hurricane, fire, whatever, are no longer in business 2 years later. I thought that was an amazing statistic, and it was put out by the government.
Why? Why are they no longer in business?
I think many times over, they're not prepared in terms of their response. They're not prepared sometimes in terms of the proper insurance. Maybe they don't have flood insurance and it's a flooding event. Maybe they have insurance, but as it turns out, they don't have loss of business income insurance. They may have insurance on their building, on their property, the items they're selling. They may not have proper amounts of business income. You can insure an anticipated loss of revenue as part of your insurance policy for your business plan. So it could be many things like that.
So let's go back to this hurricane that's rounded the turn in the Keys. It's heading up into the Gulf. The cone of uncertainty is wide. It continues to narrow as it approaches the shore, and you're getting prepared. Now, I'm still unclear on how that looks. Are you buying truckloads of generators to drive them into, Satsuma and say, all right, here's the generators? Or are you organizing adjusters out there saying, I need you guys on hand because as soon as this thing clears, I need you on site? What is the action you're taking as that cone of uncertainty gets more and more narrow? What are you doing?
Okay, so, and stepping back for a second, in my career, I started off in the insurance side of things as an adjuster. My dad was an adjuster. I grew up in that business. So did that for 15 years. The following 10 years, I worked for the world's largest disaster recovery company. That particular business operated in 30, 40 countries around the world. Under that scenario, we had Fortune 500 companies all over the place that we would have disaster plans with and would have to prepare for. Sometimes that's big box retail chains that want generators on standby. They want you to come board up the windows. Do things like that to be prepared. As soon as the storm moves past, and these are the biggest of the big box retailers that you can imagine. As soon as the storm passes, they want boots on the ground, analyzing damage, securing openings in the roof, or securing where storefront glass may have blown out. The buildings could be full of water. All of this is prioritized and pre-planned before, which gives the quickest and most speedy recovery efforts.
Russell, I want to pick this up after the break. We need to go to the break. I'm really interested in what this preparation is looking like. Let's keep in this conversation when we come back. Folks, you're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. On the line with me, Russell Fountain, the owner of Global Disaster Solutions. We're talking about the work they do when, in our hypothetical conversation now, the hurricane rounds the corner in the Keys and is headed north, something that we've all somewhat been familiar with. Reach out to us. You can email Cam, C-A-M, at what'sworkingcam.com. That's Cam, C-A-M, at what'sworkingcam.com. We'll be back after this break.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
Investing, connecting, leading, providing. The Community Foundation of South Alabama brings together philanthropic assets to make Southwest Alabama a better place to live, work, and play. We link donors to philanthropy. Working with you, we build communities. Contact us at communityfoundationsa.org.
Human Resource Departments spend countless hours on insurance billing mistakes, Obamacare rules, and compliance. Employee benefits serve the purpose of recruiting, retaining, and rewarding employees. We can handle all of your benefit needs with cost-effective products, employee enrollments, and handle your HR issues. Benefit admin doesn't have to be complicated. My name is Michael Cowart Jr. of the Cowart Group, and we specialize in helping businesses with their employee benefit packages. Visit CowartAssociates.com.
Russell Fountain is the owner of Global Disaster Solutions, and prior to the break, we were talking about the actions, the steps that his company takes when the hurricane is on its way. It's not just hurricanes they deal with. It's flooding. It sounds like it may be earthquakes and wildfires in the future. It's disasters, whatever that may be. Russell, prior to the break, you're telling us what you're doing as the storm approaches. Please continue.
Okay, so, as the storm approaches, depending on who your client is, you have prepared for them. I believe we're talking about some of the big box retail type chains that I have had the privilege of working for in the past, and it's the pre-planning aspect. Sometimes it's tractor trailers loaded full of equipment and supplies, emergency supplies that can get that business back up and running as quickly as possible. And we used to stage these things, outside of the cone of the hurricane. So let's just say hurricane, under this scenario, the hurricane's coming straight from Mobile Bay. Okay, well, we have truckloads of equipment, might be sitting in Texas, Atlanta, farther to the east, Tallahassee, back that way, just literally waiting to come in. Manpower, labor. A lot of the stuff I do now on the consulting side, it's the same thing. I'm not necessarily developing, bringing in, hundreds and hundreds of workers like I used to, but I give a high level perspective to my clients and help them through this process. An insurance company, the adjusters could hire me. I'm there, almost boots on the ground as soon as some of these events happen. Also, helping do initial scopes of assessment, scopes of damage assessments. How bad is the building affected? How much is this going to cost?
Yeah.
I mean, an insurance company needs to know almost immediately what kind of exposure they have in a geographic area after a community-wide event such as a hurricane, but also dial down to each individual risk that they insure. Is this a $10 million loss, a $1 million loss, a $100,000 loss? How many of these do we have? So they're actuaries, they're underwriters, they're sitting there figuring all this out because they have to go to their investment side, to their bankers, to their banks and say, hey, we have $100 million exposure here. It could just be one insurance company. So the number crunching, the assessments, it's all just critically important that be done as quickly as possible.
So it sounds like you're served the role almost as a ringmaster. And there is stuff going on in this three-ring circus all around you. You're orchestrating it all. You've got people, I assume they're 1099 contractors that are coming in to work for you, have a special expertise. Is that correct?
Typically, yes, or other companies that can be partnered up. I mean, there's the disaster recovery industry is really a huge industry. There are so many companies out there performing it. And, within the industry, you make alliances, you work with people, kind of like any other business, I guess, but there are resources available. I'm a resource available to people. I have people who are resources that are available to me. So, we will band together to come in and help our customers.
I know that hurricanes have season, but is in your business with the scope of it, disasters, is it seasonal in any way?
Nationwide, it's really not seasonal. I mean, you have cold weather events, polar vortexes. You have spring rain events, which lead to localized flooding, summer storms that are not hurricane related. Of course, tornadoes or unfortunately, they're probably the most devastating thing out there. I guess a wildfire is too, but those are primarily isolated to California for the most part.
Yeah.
So it is really around the clock. And then a disaster to someone, it doesn't have to be a big community-wide event. I mean, it can be a localized fire that takes out a manufacturing facility or pipe burst on a 20th floor of a building downtown and floods all 20 floors. I mean, it could be all sorts of things.
Yeah, so it's not always a natural disaster. It could be a malfunctioning of a piece of water equipment in the building.
More times than not, that is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And many times those can be small in nature, but oftentimes they can also be very big.
Yeah. Do you have a particular type of person? I'm looking for an expertise or a job description or a title that you're absolutely dependent upon when these disasters strike. Who is your number one person? I'm not looking for a name of an individual, but a quality.
Are you talking about in terms of a customer of mine or someone that we're responding to help?
No, I'm talking about somebody that is an ally of yours, somebody that you rely on to get your work done. Not exactly a customer, but somebody who's integral to you being successful in your work.
Really, it's the relationships you build within the industry. I identify certain companies, certain people who are not only good at what they do, but they're honest. And they respond when they say they're going to respond. You know, one of the things that is rewarding to me is to, especially if you've had talks with a customer prior to an event, and you just say, "Hey, we'll be here for you if something happens. You know, we will respond. We will keep you in business." Of course, that could be a school, that could be anything, but you know, to keep them in business, that's keeping students in the seats, or if it's a hotel, that's keeping people renting the rooms. All sorts of things. A store to keep the cash register ringing, so to speak.
Sure.
So, but to be able to deliver when you're called upon and provide exactly what you promised them, and it kept them in business. You met that deadline that they had. A critical deadline for a school is if a university is impacted by something. You know, you have semesters, you have quarters. I mean, school starts every fall in August, right? If they have something that impacts one of their buildings or multiple buildings, they may not be able to have school. So where do 10 to 20 to 30,000 students go? They could lose that enrollment because they could go to another university, and this has happened before. They could go to another university because the university they're at is going to be down for a semester or a year.
I immediately think of Tulane University. I'm a graduate of Tulane post-Katrina, and the vulnerability that school had after Katrina of whether they were going to be even able to reopen or not. It was a heroic work by many of the people that were left in New Orleans afterwards to keep what students they could, and then what they did to make Tulane a viable school in the future after that. You folks, you're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. On the line with me, Russell Fountain. He's the owner of Global Disaster Solutions. Find this episode as a podcast on my website, cammarston.com. Listen again as well as to previous shows, or send it to your friends if you wish. Russell, I'm guessing that when you wake up in the morning, this is completely conjecture and probably crazy. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is turn on the Weather Channel to wonder where your next bit of work is coming from. Is that reasonable?
You know, I watch the Weather Channel a lot during the peak of hurricane season. I don't do that on a regular basis. I mean, I know right now there's flooding in Jackson, Mississippi, because I was on the road yesterday, and I'm just hearing about it on the regular radio. So I don't have to do that. I do like the Weather Channel. I do watch it a lot. It is intriguing. Definitely watch it a lot during hurricane season.
Yeah, as we talk right now, the rain is coming down outside. The rivers here in Mobile coming down from northern Alabama are at flood stage and are supposed to get higher. Are you paying attention to any of that?
I am. I've had some discussions with some alliances of mine over the last few days about the possibility of flooding in Jackson, Mississippi. That seems to be an area that there is some concern. I don't think much will develop there, other than the areas that kind of typically always flood around rivers and different things. And those are typically rural areas, and they're a little more accustomed to it. But we're always prepared. You know, you mentioned me waking up and turning on the Weather Channel. I may do that, but I can wake up any day and have no idea what's in store for me that day. Yeah. I may have a plan of what's in store that day, and it can get changed on the whim of a phone call. So in our industry, you really never know.
I'm wondering what technology is doing to your business. A friend of mine paves parking lots and says through some of I think it's Google Earth, he can use a Google Earth satellite image and measure the square feet of the parking lot through that image and quote without never having to go on site. Is that something similar happening in your profession?
Absolutely. And isn't that amazing that people can do that now?
It's just amazing.
I have a particular insurance company customer that I do a lot of the consulting work for, and it's typically condominiums, shopping centers, and if they get me involved, that's kind of one of the first things they just like for me to do is I'll go on Google Earth and get some rough dimensions and give them a worst case scenario. For instance, if the entire roof of a shopping center had to be replaced. it may or may not even need that, but initially they're trying to get back to that rough forecasting of reserves. What kind of exposure might they be looking at on this claim? So I do that a lot too. I'll go on Google Earth and sketch it out and get the dimensions, and I'll try to zoom in and see what kind of roofing product it looks like it is. And typically I can tell or be pretty close. And we crunch rough numbers. Worst case scenario is rough numbers. So just so we know right off the bat, you have Google Earth. What's really neat after hurricanes now, and NOAA did this after Hurricane Michael, which I was heavily involved in Panama City, I guess a year and a half ago now. They had a satellite view of the impacted area, geographic area, so all of Panama City, kind of over towards Mexico Beach, a before and after shot. And they said so NOAA provided a link that we all had, and you could take that satellite imagery of what a building or property looked like before the hurricane, and then from the satellite perspective, what it looks like after. And you can see roofs blown off and on schools or nursing homes or, whatever you might be looking at after the hurricane has passed. I mean, that's amazing. Really, really neat technology.
And is that available to someone like me, or is this a commercial product only from NOAA?
I think it's available to anyone through the industry. I was sent the link. I don't exactly know how it was public information. I don't know how the link was actually put out to have the post-hurricane satellite imagery, but they did, and it was really neat. Other technology that's really big in our industry now is the use of drones. Yeah,
I was going to ask you about drones.
A lot of people out there are utilizing drones. I've seen drones utilized many times. They give a great bird's eye view perspective of damage at elevated levels. Typically that's roofs, but it can be, elevations of large buildings. Fly it up and look at it. Fly over roofs and get an idea. You can't see from the ground. They're inaccessible by a ladder. This is the days after a storm. It lets you know real quick, what you're looking at. There is one of the neater things in our industry is 3D technology that offers interactive walkthrough experiences. So they have these cameras, and I just saw one in use in a big project I'm working on up in Birmingham just last week. And it gives a 360 degree view of a room, and it takes about 15 seconds to do that. And you have to move it and put it in different plots and different waypoints, and you just stage it in each room. It keeps up with your movement, your track. You can do multiple levels. This was a 30-story building, but 7 stories are affected by water. So they're in the process of creating this 7-story 3D interactive video, for lack of a better word, that you can email to the insurance companies, to the consultants, to the contractors, to all the players that can be involved in the recovery process. And not only does it give you a real world walkthrough and you're seeing the damage that has been caused, it also measures everything for you. You don't even have to use a measure and tape.
Wow. Let's talk more about these technology trends when we come back from break. Folks, Russell has offered to our listeners a really valuable tool, and that is a pre-disaster checklist. He's listed the top 10 things you need to be prepared for or to have ready in event of a disaster coming. And if you want to get a copy of this, what you need to do is text "what's working" as one word, no apostrophes, to 44222. Again, "what's working" to 44222, and then follow the prompts you'll find on your phone at that point, and you'll get that checklist emailed to you. Russell is the owner of Global Disaster Solutions. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be back after this break.
The Community Foundation of South Alabama links donors to philanthropy, builds networks across 8 counties, and builds dreams for those in need. Through our donors' gifts, we make investments that enhance our community via initiatives with broad impact. Working with you, we build communities. Contact us at communityfoundationsa.org.
First Protective is a multidimensional financial firm specializing in risk management. We blend all dimensions of financial services, offering our producers diverse products to create multiple revenue streams. If you're a life insurance producer or in the traditional investment business looking to grow your business, we can help. Call me, Jay Stubbs, at 251-604-7024 or find me online at www.firstprotective.com.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that make people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I focus on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance, or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and get to a better state with State Farm.
I'm Matt Armbruster with Ransom Ministries. We help people in our community that most others have given up on. Please donate your unwanted electronics to Ransom Recycling. We teach life skills, job readiness, and job creation through our electronic recycling program. We take anything with a cord. Find us at ransomministries.com, or you can call us at 251-751-0044.
Russell Fountain is the owner of Global Disaster Solutions. He is busy both before and after a disaster, which is defined many different ways, in helping business owners, etc., prepare for a forthcoming disaster as well as to recover from a disaster. Russell, prior to the break, we were talking about the phenomenal 3D technology that you were working with in the building in Birmingham that is really kind of a game changer. And you can email it, which I think makes it so even more fascinating that this amount of data and information can be simply emailed. Is there anything else that technology is really, that you look at and say, and just rub your chin and say, that's pretty cool?
Well, there's a lot of things out there. You know, there are so many app-based programs now that you can do so many things from your phone or from an iPad while you're on the scene, while you're crawling through a damaged building that didn't exist even a year ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago now. I mean, technology is changing so quickly, it's almost hard to keep up with.
And it's making your job easier. I suspect so much easier and quicker to get the things you need to do done. Now, when you step into an environment, and again, disaster is often a term that each owner of the building uses differently, you have to have seen some pretty interesting things. I know those videos that I watch of the tsunami approaching the Japanese coast. I've watched those things over and over again, and the volume of water, but it creates some remarkable after shots as well. Boats on tops of buildings, 4 stories up on the tops of buildings, cars stacked on top of each other. You have to have seen some pretty amazing things in your work, some things that truly took your breath away. Do you have any that you can share?
Well, you're correct. There are a lot of those. You know, geographically speaking, in the Southeast, which is, you know, where I spend most of my time, Texas up North Carolina, it's mostly tornadoes and hurricanes for the most part, or a very large, devastating fire. One unique experience years ago was the Carnival cruise ship that was based in Mobile 5 or 6 years ago, caught on fire in the Gulf and lost power. One of their engineers quickly caught on fire, lost power, started floating out there. The plumbing, and you probably remember the story, the plumbing, they had issues, and they finally towed the Carnival cruise ship back to Mobile. Well, we were already contracted with Carnival, so we came in. We provided hundreds of workers working 24 hours a day to clean that ship and return it so it could be returned to service. We worked on it for 82 consecutive days, 24 hours a day, while it sat right here at the docks of, right there in the shipyard of Mobile Bay. So that was really neat in terms of crawling around the cruise ship. You're down in the engine rooms. You're down in the areas that no one ever sees when they're a passenger on a cruise ship. You're working with, the captain, the engineers. I mean, it was a fascinating job. It was a fascinating way to see things and how a cruise ship works, that when you're up on deck and having a good time on the cruise, like most of us are, you never consider everything that's going on below the deck. So that was a really interesting, unique one.
That's phenomenal. Let's stop there. Let me ask you about that. Hundreds of workers, 82 consecutive days for 24 hours a day. The amount of work that needed to be done shocks me. What was needed to be done that many people for that many days was necessary?
So basically, what we, the service we primarily provided on that was the cleaning of the ship. So the areas that have been affected by the smoke, the lower levels of the ship, the engine room, we went all the way up through the whale's tail, which is the center of the ship, where kind of everything exhausts from the ship and goes out the top. Well, that's like 12 stories. So there was a lot of cleanup associated with it. We had guys that had to go down in the bilge pump with respirators and things on to get down in certain areas of the ship because they're full of smoke, they're full of soot, they're full of ash. So anyways, it was a unique experience that required everything we had because Carnival wanted to get that ship back up and running, and back at sea because they lost a lot of revenue with all the cancellations they had when it was not in service.
Yeah. Interesting. What else? Strange environment, strange scenarios, strange things you've seen.
A lot of them are going to be associated with, other than the fires, with hurricanes and tornadoes. The Christmas Day tornado in Mobile that hit Murphy High School.
Yeah.
10 years ago. I don't exactly remember the date now. The one that hit Tuscaloosa. I was on the ground in Tuscaloosa the following morning at 7:00. Just carnage everywhere, power lines down everywhere, just destruction everywhere. Jacksonville State University just about a year and a half ago got hit by a huge tornado that affected almost every building they had on campus. It was almost like their campus was the target of that tornado, and huge loss. Just massive destruction to many buildings, and of course every building on campus was touched. So that was a huge cleanup effort, a huge consulting effort, working with the various parties, the insurers, the reinsurers, because you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage just from one event. Government Plaza had a fire years ago, and that was it smoked up the interior of the atrium here in Mobile. The judges' chambers, the courtrooms, the DA's offices were all affected by the smoke from this fire. It all had to be cleaned up. They all had to have new carpet, new paint, new ceiling tiles, new insulation. and we had to scaffold the entire Government Plaza atrium with a rolling scaffolding system. So if I remember correctly, the atrium is, I believe, 9 stories tall. All this work had to be done in conjunction with that building still being open to the public.
Yeah.
So logistics, the labor, the safety precautions, the OSHA requirements. There's so many things that come into play when you're working on these projects.
When you need tons of workers in a short amount of time, let's go back to the cruise ship, hundreds of workers. Where do you find them? That most of my clients, most of the people I talk to on this show can't find people, and you seem to be able to pull them out of a hat. Where are you finding these people?
There are certain companies out there who are labor providers specifically for the disaster recovery industry. We had local resources back then that we used with several large contractors that we had relationships with here in Mobile that provided, superintendents, experienced labor, their typical laborers that they may have working for them on other jobs. We brought in some of these big labor providers, from outside Mobile that we already had relationships with. And like I said, that's what they do for a living, and they travel all around the country. So they're workers. They're not just laborers that don't have a clue what's going on in terms of disaster recovery. They're actually they work these projects, and they just move on to another city or another location to do the same thing for someone else. So like I said earlier, it's a really large industry. There's a lot of companies and a lot of players out there who have niches in it. And we all kind of band together to, help someone recover from whatever event they're faced with.
That's interesting. How does I'm interested in your answer to this. How do you settle up the bill on something like that? Everybody knows everybody, everybody's friends. You don't know who brought who to the table. Do you get a referral fee, or no, we already knew each other? Is there ever a tension over settling up the bill?
There is a tension to it. Everything is prearranged in terms of pricing a skilled laborer versus an unskilled laborer, someone who provides project management support. Typically, there's industry rates out there that insurance companies are accustomed to paying on large loss events. There's a lot of behind the scenes accounting, bookkeeping, a lot of paperwork to sort and digest and to have everything correct. So they're immediately you're and we come out there, and the companies that do this, I mean, you come out there and you can be working for weeks on a project, sometimes months on a project without being paid anything.
Yeah.
Because the customer you're working for may not have been paid anything yet from the insurance company. And that could just be because no one knows what the dollar amount's going to be.
Right.
It's an evolving, every day is an evolving trend. Oh, we found more damage, or we found less, or there's a whole nother floor of this building affected no one realized 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So the scope grows, the price grows. The key to that is having the right people with the right amount of experience doing the right things together to make that back end reconciliation of paperwork and documentation and billing come together much easier.
Let's reset it, and I want to talk to you finally about global warming and the future of your business. This is Cam Marston. You're listening to What's Working. On the line with me, Russell Fountain, the owner of Global Disaster Solutions. Russell has been generous in offering our listeners a top 10 list of called a pre-disaster checklist. To get a copy of that, text the word "What's Working," no apostrophes, one word. Text "What's Working" to 44222 and then follow the prompts to get that list. Also, check us out on Instagram, What's Working with Cam Marston. Russell, I suspect that when you go to conventions for your business, global warming is a part of the conversation, and it's gonna increase your business. Let's face it. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting that global warming is a hotly debated topic out there that scientists and politicians and things, people agree, disagree on. I have no way of providing any particular insight into are things we're faced with today specifically from global warming. I think they are. I see more, over the last 10 to 15 years in particular, I see a lot more devastating flood events there just should not be that many flooding events. I see more destructive, big wedge tornadoes and things that seemingly didn't occur with the same frequency as years ago. Hurricanes are hurricanes. They've always been around. They ebb and flow. Living on the Gulf Coast, we're all familiar with Hurricane Ivan, Hurricane Katrina back in 2004, 2005. But really after 2005, there were not many hurricanes in the Gulf Coast for 6, 7, 8 years. Since that time, though, they've all picked back up again, and they seem to occur with some frequency. Last year, oddly enough, I don't think a major hurricane, I know a major hurricane did not impact the United States. Yet, I read some article the other day, too, and it said in 2019, I think it said there were 14 individual disasters that created over $1 billion in damage each. We didn't even have a big hurricane.
And it does not include a hurricane. Yeah.
Right. So we were close to it with Dorian that ended up destroying, the Bahamas. If that would have hit the east side of Florida as was expected, you talk about the phone ringing off the hook before that. There was a lot of people preparing, a lot of people, frankly, freaking out a little bit because of where it would have hit on the East Coast and the major metropolitan areas from Miami up to Jacksonville. But 14 individual $1 billion disasters last year. And I can't even think of one in particular. The article also said that those 14 individual events actually created $45 billion in damages. And this is a NOAA article I read. So, National Oceanic Atmospheric Association. So, this is real factual information. So, same article said, hey, this past January, just last month, the hottest January on record on Earth. I think it's like the last 150, they've only kept records for like 150 years. The hottest January ever was last month.
Yeah. So
it also said the last 4 Januaries have been the hottest ever. So there is something, I believe in global warming. I do think it is creating more events. I think the events are getting more larger. I think we're prepared for the smaller events better than we used to. New building codes, things like that. I don't see category 2 and 3 hurricanes really causing that super destructive damage they used to because the building codes are so much better. But I also see more category 4s and 5s than I ever remember seeing in the last 25, 30 years.
Russell Fountain is the owner of Global Disaster Solutions based here in Mobile. He has generously offered our listeners a pre-disaster checklist, top 10 things you need to think about and have ready for this hurricane that, in my opinion, and this is why I pay my homeowner's insurance, is coming. I don't know when, but I just know it's coming. It's unavoidable living in this part of the world. If you want a copy of this pre-disaster checklist, enter what's working on your text. Text what's working to 44222. Follow the prompts. Russell, thank you so much for your time. This has been really interesting, and I would say I wish the best for you, but the best for you means somebody's had a bad day.
That is true. It's really, you get to meet a lot of people in this industry responding to their needs, and I've often thought it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to help people in their time of need. Many of my customers have become friends through the years, and it's kind of funny, a lot of times they'll thank me, Russell, it was great meeting you. Thank you so much. I certainly hope I don't see you anytime soon.
Let's finish with that. Russell, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Folks, you're listening to What's Working. We'll be back with final comments after this break. Again, Russell, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Do you sometimes wonder about different money topics, but struggle to find the answers? The Every Dollar Counts podcast with Gulf Coast experts Josh Knoll and Jay Stubbs is made for those folks serious about their financial plan and looking for answers. Josh and Jay dedicate their time to explaining the various services and products available, as well as discussing lifestyle and money interests of the modern-day family. Tune in to Every Dollar Counts on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else you get your favorite podcasts.
Is your business growing? Does your existing metal building need an update? Expansion? New roof? With almost 20 years of experience, Mosley Building Systems is the leading metal building contractor along the Gulf Coast. We are your local design build experts. From expansion to new construction or repairs, we can guide you through all aspects of your project. Mosley Building Systems works with each client to fulfill their vision. For more information, go to mosleybuildingsystems.com.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
That's our show this week. I appreciate Russell Fountain's time. Interesting business that he's in. We probably will interact with him or someone like him one of these days, as one of these storms certainly going to hit Mobile again. Don't think that I'm being pessimistic. It's just going to happen. And I've noticed what he mentioned about the increasing intensity of the storms in the recent past, as well as the rain. It continues to rain as I record this. Been raining throughout the whole interview. Anyway, reach out to us. What's Working with Cam Marston on Instagram? 251-260-8100 is our unmanned phone/text line. And you can go to cammarston.com and find this as a podcast. I want to thank John Thompson as the show's producer. He's with Eye On Digital, EYEON Digital, and Kristen Ogden, who facilitates all these conversations. Have a good week, everyone. We'll have another show next week.